Welcome back to another episode of The Hip. My name is James Layton, CEO and founder of Anderson James. This is the podcast where every single week I bring you a leader from our sector to discuss some of the biggest challenges in UK housing today. Today I was delighted to be joined by Jacqui De-Rose, Chief Executive of Progress Housing. We talk about how Jacqui's upbringing and some of the experiences she had with her mum have shaped her career, the merger in 2021 with Reside and how that's now made Progress one of the biggest supported living providers in the UK. We talk about how important the sector is and how supported living has evolved in recent years, and how Progress have created an internship to try and encourage those with learning difficulties and autism into the workplace through a company called Project Search. And finally, we talked around one of Progress's key mantras of creating new opportunities, which has included them creating a trainee NED scheme that has been a great success for their business. I hope you like the episode, and if you do, I'd ask that you like and subscribe. Jacqui, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks very much for inviting me, James. I'm very pleased to be here.
No worries. As I always like to start, just for the purpose of the listeners, do you mind just giving us a little introduction to yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Jacqui De-Rose. I work for Progress Housing Group, and I've worked in the housing sector the whole of my career, really. I started working, having gone to college, being really interested in sort of business and corporate law and computing. And I had the opportunity to go on a placement in a housing association and help them introduce what was their very first computer system. So it was a long time ago.
Wow.
And it was for their waiting list system. And they needed to process map all their processes and circumstances of people's housing situations in order to create this points waiting list system. And I suddenly realised, having gone through that process with them, it was a fabulous experience, that actually the interesting bit was not the computer bit, the programming bit, it was actually people and their situation and their circumstances, and how important really good quality, secure housing was for them to build their lives and manage points of crisis in their lives. So it really, struck me how important social housing is in our society. And I was hooked, that's what I wanted to do. And they had a housing trainee job, and I applied for it and then did a housing degree. And the rest of is history, as they say. So we went from there, and I've never lost that real connection with the power of good housing and the impact on people's lives.
Yeah, no, amazing. And I know when we spoke and when we were doing some preparation for this, growing up in Sheffield, and early on in your career, you saw that positive impact, like you've just said. But I know that your mum was quite a big influence in that. So how did that all influence some of the decisions you make now, but also the decisions you've made in your career to this point?
Mum had an interesting experience, which I didn't really learn about until I was older, and she shared with me. But she left an abusive relationship, and social housing helped to rebuild a new life, really, in a new area, in a new community. And that experience that she had, and the importance of good quality homes, as I say, and the opportunity to find a safe place and build good relationships and support networks was really important in her experience. And I suppose really, that has helped me understand, and my early years of growing up in social housing, just what that can do in a crisis moment, but also in terms of feeling part of a community, which is so important for all of us. Big influence, and maybe some of that understanding that she shared with me has influenced the way in which I look at housing and why I'm involved in it, really.
Amazing. And I when I was looking into it, 20 years at the helm of of progress, and you think, I'm sure that feels like not 20 years, but as we were saying off camera, but like what's changed for you? What's been some of the standout moments in that 20 years, maybe for progress, but the sector as a general thing? What have you seen as some of the big milestones in that period?
Yeah, there's been, 20 years is a long time, and it has flown by. It's been fabulous. But there has been some real challenges in that period, and inevitably, enormous things have changed during that time. There's just that whole sort of the IT and digital world in which we operate. 20 years ago, we just didn't do things the way that we're able to do things now, and all the self-service and mobile working and agile working that we do. That instantaneous way of working, really. Previously you'd send a letter and even an email you'd send in, it might be several days before you got a response. Now it's like in the moment, isn't it?
It is.
So that whole digital world for all of us, not just for the world of housing, has shifted the way in which we operate as people, how we communicate, how we expect services to be delivered, and of course how we deliver services as organisations. So that is a big change, and I think housing organisations have embraced that opportunity to work in a digital format, and particularly around inclusivity, because whilst people say, well, it doesn't suit everyone. I know that actually, we still offer lots of telephone services and in-person services because not everybody wants to do things digitally. But actually, some of our tenants who have learning difficulties say that they like the web chat. They really like the opportunity to be able to access services directly online because actually they do sometimes struggle with those sort of traditional telephone services or in-person service approaches. So, that's interesting, because actually sometimes we forget that really should be an individual choice. What works for the individual, and have that offer.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big change, I think.
Yeah, and to be honest, I would have thought that would have been the other way. So interestingly, like a misconception from me there, I thought that people with learning difficulties would like to speak to someone, but actually, I can understand why that would be, that they would want to use the digital channels. And I suppose, in that 20 years, if we look at today, this feels like a difficult period to be a chief executive in our sector, firstly. Secondly, all the different challenges, cost of living crises, we need more properties, more social housing, more independent living. Is this the toughest time you've seen in the sector, would you say, or would you say there's been tougher areas in the 20 years you've worked in it?
It's interesting. I think it is a tough time for society, and therefore, because we are working as a sector at the heart of some of those communities that are most disadvantaged, it inevitably is a tough time for us as well. But I think the current problem always feels the worst problem, doesn't it?
Of course, of course.
There's something in that, but I do think there are some real challenges in our society that you've mentioned, and we need to talk about those things and talk about what we need from various organisations and individuals to help us work together to see ourselves through that, because lots of public services are under pressure, and we know that those there's no magic solution for some of the austerity issues that we're facing. It's going to take a long time to help people through those, and actually we're here dealing with points of crisis very often, but we also need to think about what will help for the longer term to keep, to move into that sustainability area where we can actually put things in place that are going to be good for the future and good for people and help them through those challenging times. So I do think that there are a lot of really difficult issues that we're facing, but we're facing them as a society as well as a sector, a housing sector. And I'm really keen for us to talk about, well, what does that mean for individuals? What actually do we need to try and deliver as organisations, whether it be housing organisations, education, whether it's public sector, whether it's private sector or the charity sector, and what we need from government and local government in order to actually work through these issues together.
Yeah, No, I agree. And as I was looking through all the progress housing, vision, values, everything, like the thing that stood out to me, providing high quality homes, supporting independence and creating opportunities. You've sort of encapsulated some of the things you've just said there in that vision. Like being the leader in supported living, I suppose, and the merger with Reside probably give you that national presence as well. Can you tell us a bit about what you wanted to achieve through that, and also kind of what you've seen as the impact in the short term that has brought around?
Yeah, I mean, it was great that we were able to merge with Reside because we both got a real commitment to delivering homes for people who had support needs, and particularly people with autism, learning difficulties, and disabilities. People with acquired brain injury and other mental health needs. So there was a real synergy there in the client groups that we want to try and deliver good quality housing and support to. So it was a real opportunity to bring their specialist knowledge and our specialist knowledge in that area together and build, as you say, a bigger national platform in which hopefully we can influence the way in which services are developed for those customers.
Yeah.
We can make sure that actually that customer voice is heard and the needs of those customers, which is very diverse, but inevitably they do need new accommodation, they need support services to achieve that independence and to have good quality day-to-day living. So those things, we shared those aspirations, and we really want to make sure that that's a quality product that people, feel confident to move in. Family and advocates feel confident that people with those learning difficulties can move into those homes and actually feel like it's a home, it's their home. They can make day-to-day choices about what they want to do. I mean, we sometimes forget, don't we? But as all of us, we get up in the morning, we decide what we're going to do with that day. We decide, what time we need to get up, whether we're having breakfast, what we have for breakfast, whether we're going out, we're staying in, whether we're watching something on TV, whether we're going to work, whether we're bringing, having friends round, or, all those things. Those are just daily choices that we all make. And people with learning disability previously, in an institutionalized environment, don't get that day-to-day option to make those choices and decisions. In supported living, they do. And I think that's a wonderful gift, because actually we all deserve the right to feel independent and to make our own decisions and our own choices around how we live our life and live that, to the full. So some of the basic support and services that offers to people is incredibly important. And if you haven't got it, you really know what having independence means. So that's a real focus for us as a specialist organisation, delivering those services and trying to make sure that voice is heard, that actually the needs of people, and there's enormous need out there in our society, that type of accommodation, that support is available to people so they can enjoy a fulfilling life.
Yeah, and how's the sector itself changed? If we just take, supported living as a sector, I know it sits within the housing sector, but how's that changed? Because, we've definitely put more of a spotlight, and it's brilliant this, on the individual needs of individuals. Whereas I remember when I got into the sector 15, 16 years ago, it was very much like everyone was blanketed in the same part. And obviously, my daughter's got autism, and I think that the needs are very different to someone else with different learning disability needs. What's changed for you in that, in terms of how you deliver your services, and how bespoke can it get from what you can deliver with what you've got within your remit?
I think it's really important that we first and foremost focus on the individual, absolutely. And we've got so many means on which to deliver services these days, as we talked about, around technology and digital services. So we really can think, what is it that individual needs, and they can tell us what they need, and we can tailor that package of support to the individual. Right. So I think we have definitely the means. We have to have the will as well to do that, because it's easier and cheaper for organisations, isn't it, just to do it one way, or to say this is the way we do it, you fit to the process. So I think it is a challenge, because actually we're all under pressure to deliver things, as our organisation's business efficiently and deliver value for money. But I actually think that should not be at the cost of the individual's needs, and we should start in that space. What is it that the individual requires from us, and then is there a way in which we can deliver that so that actually it works for them? And we don't always get it right, we haven't always got the answer, but I think we at least need to start with that question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was trying to look at the scale of the problem. So I was looking at, when I was doing some research for this, doesn't look like there's enough supported living in the country. So again, the same problem with the housing crisis. But can you just talk to us about the availability firstly, and then I want to just come on to kind of like why it's so important that we have the availability, and also how we can create more environments. But what's the scale of the problem that you see in terms of the availability of enough supported living?
Well, it is. I agree. There's scarcity across the whole of our housing sectors, and particularly, I think, good quality, affordable, secure housing, which is what social housing is provided, and it aims to provide. So there is enormous shortage there. We're several millions of people short of accommodation. I think for supported living, there's a lot of hidden need. There's lots of people who are currently in family environments where the family is managing the needs of the individual, but the individual is certainly capable and keen to have their own place. And it's very hard to access accommodation and then the support that might be needed in order to enable that to happen. So there's lots of hidden need in supported living, which we probably aren't capturing in our society in terms of those numbers. And then there's lots of people still in institutionalised settings and hospital settings that, again, don't really need that 24-hour care sort of package and setting. And actually, it is stopping them from enjoying and fulfilling their life by not having some of those choices that we talked about. So there's many, many hundreds of thousands more in those sorts of environments and settings as well. So it is very difficult because we haven't got a clear national picture on this. And that's one of the things that we're working with other providers on, to try and get a better understanding of not only what accommodation is out there, but actually what more we need and what type of accommodation we need. Because we really do need to make sure we put more investment into enabling more provision.
Yeah, and I presume, and I do presume, it's an education piece in terms of letting the world know that supported living is a thing, and it is a sector, and it is something that we can help more people with. I suppose a lot of families think they have to take that on themselves, and I'm sure the individuals probably don't want to live at home. They probably want to have some independence, as you've said. What about the advancements in technology? Can that do anything to support us, do you think, or has it helped over the last 10 years in order to help deliver better services to those people?
Oh, it has enormously, and I think there's so much scope in that area. It's one of the areas that we want to do more work in. We have what we call a lifeline service. So what I think traditionally each of us would think of as older people prone to falling, with a pendant that they can press if they need to call for help. But beyond that technology, there are monitoring devices that we can use. There's intercom services that we can install. There's the whole Alexa stuff that can help people live their lives and manage their apartments or homes in various ways. We can switch things on, turn things off, answer doors, and so the technology is enormously important in helping people to attain that independence and retain it for longer, really, as we all get older and society, gets older. So I think that is certainly an area that I think there's enormous potential, and we hope to be, one of those leading providers that can actually demonstrate that through some pilot projects with other partners.
Yeah, no, definitely. And one thing I've not asked, I suppose, and probably because of the merger, what's the sort of scale and what's the sort of helicopter view as we sit here today of progress in terms of just numbers? Like how many properties? Like what's the sort of overview of the business as we sit here today?
It's interesting. We've got about 12,500 properties
Right. Okay.
on our
Right.
stock, but actually each day, because of all the other services that we provide, like Lifeline, for instance,
Yeah.
we're probably serving over 90,000 people on a daily basis, 24 hours a day.
Right.
Every day, so there's a lot of people depending on us for good quality service, and that being able to be there and give assurance and be able to respond appropriately, either at points of crisis or on more routine matters, is incredibly important for us. And we work very hard to ensure that those services and that support is there as it's needed every single day, as I say. And so because the organisation is quite diverse in terms of the type of accommodation we have and the type of services we offer, it does mean that I tend to talk less in numbers of stock and
Yeah, of
more in
course.
numbers of people.
I get that, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's nice because normally it's like how big is your organisation? This many units, and you kind of yeah, but it's nice to see it in that sense and scale. I mean, that is phenomenal scale, and really interesting. And where will that develop? Do you think? I mean, what's the sort of vision beyond this point? Now the Reside merger's happened, and you're a national provider. What would be next? Do you think in that sense?
Oh, I mean, we most important to us is what we do. We want to do well. So to our existing customers, we want to make sure that
Yeah, of course.
we deliver a really good, consistent quality service, because that's our aspiration. So it's always about that, and making sure we're doing that well, rather than what's the next big thing and but we do like to innovate, and I think I talked about some of the items around technology and how we can
Yeah,
use technology to assist people in their home and in their working and living lives. So that is something that we probably will want to grow more in.
right.
We've never really been driven by numbers, but if we do something well and we feel that we're capable of doing more of it, then we will look for those opportunities, because there is, as I've said, that
Yeah,
ongoing need out there. So we'll continue to develop new homes. We'll hopefully ensure that the services we deliver now are delivered really well, and we get the best quality we can service to people that we're already working with. And beyond that, really, we haven't said. So
yeah,
we haven't got a number in mind. We
yeah.
haven't
Good.
sort of been
I
driven
like
by
that.
that.
I like that, driven by quality as opposed to the number, and it's got to be the right services. One thing that I loved when I was doing my research for this was the internship that you were doing for people with learning difficulties, Project Search, I think it was called.
Yeah.
Talk us about that. It sounds brilliant, but I'd love to know a bit more about that.
It is brilliant. Thank you for bringing Project Search up, because it's really close to our heart. For a couple of years now, we've been working with Project Search. They're a national charity.
Yeah,
They have an aspiration to get as many people as possible with learning difficulties, autism, into employment opportunities.
right.
I think they have a target of 10,000 young people over this decade.
Yeah,
So we decided, as I say, a couple of years ago, to be involved in that. And we're one of the host employers.
okay.
We work with we work with the local authority and local education colleges, and most importantly with a group of individuals each year, and give them a year of experience of working in our organisation. And it's intended, really. I mean, it's a tough time, isn't it? As a young
Of course.
adult
Yeah,
leaving school, deciding what you want to do, trying to get into employment, is a really tough time. But even more so if an individual that's got learning difficulties. So we want to try and help them make that transition. And very often when we first meet people, they are very quiet, very insular, and not very confident. And within a few weeks, people are transformed into excited and enthusiastic human beings who really enjoy learning and developing. And so Project Search is about finding a placement with an employer that will support you to learn what the world of work is like, learn some new skills, find out what it is that you're good at, as an individual, and what you can excel at, and really build your confidence. And we've had 18 young people working with us now, and they've all been successful at moving on. Either a couple of them are working for us now, and others, moving on and getting other work opportunities. So it's a really high success rate, and they are wonderful to work with. We learn just as much as they do, because we learn about being more inclusive, about being more adaptable and more flexible in the way in which we do things at work. And it really gets us thinking about, well, how can we make our organisation more inclusive? So it's a brilliant project. I would urge any employer to be involved. It's really, really worthwhile.
Well, and if people do want to get involved in that, because I'm sure they will, is that Project Search just find out?
Yeah, just Google Project Search and information will come up. Yeah.
And the thing for me is just something that struck me when you said that. I mean, how was the new world of working, as let's call it that for now, the remoteness and all that, how was that? Sounds to me like that'll be a deterrent to some of this stuff in terms of having people around and being able to support better, or is that not the case? Like, what's been your
Yeah, it has been difficult. I think it's fair to say that the first time we were involved with Project Search Programme, we were working very much remotely, and it was more difficult because they, as individuals, they often prosper by having that face-to-face, one-to-one experience. And the second year that we've been involved, we've been able to do more of that. And we have found it's the progression of individuals in terms of that learning has been that much quicker as a consequence. So I think it's possible, whatever style of working you have. But again, the fundamental thing is understanding what each individual might need and what best suits them, and having the flexibility and the adaptability, really. And that's what we've learned most, I think, that actually you can put a program together and in theory, it looks as though it works, but you have got to be prepared to adapt and make sure that the individual's requirements are matched, and be flexible around that.
Yeah, and I'm sure confidence gets built tenfold in person than it does remotely, and all the things that come with that. So it's interesting. I'm going to look up that, and I'll make sure it's in the show notes for anyone that wants to get involved with Project Search. But love that. And the other thing that I saw was again on your vision, creating new opportunities around the trainee NED scheme. Can you tell us a little bit around that, just in terms of how it works, what it is? Because I love the idea of it, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we quite a few years ago now, I'm trying to think, it was pre-COVID anyway. People talking pre and post-COVID, don't we? Pre-COVID, we recognised, and I think, as a sector, we've recognised, and that actually there was underrepresentation in our boardrooms. Most board members came from the world of work and were, older, had got, into that retirement phase and had got time on their hands that they could dedicate to being on a board. Generally men rather than women, but, so there was this sort of standard almost look of boardrooms that wasn't very, very diverse. Right. So we wanted to try and do something about that, and we worked with Housing Diversity Network within the housing sector. They do a lot of work with housing associations and other organisations, and tried to develop a programme that enabled people who were not your typical board member, so maybe people from different ethnic backgrounds, younger people with disabilities, people who had housing sort of real life experience of living in housing. In our sector, and help them develop the skills and experience so that they were able to compete for board vacancies when they came up. Right. So we developed a programme which was working, doing some work with HDN and some learning sessions and group sessions and learning about the theory, but of being an ed, but also then being in the organisation, being in the boardroom, in our committees, and hearing and contributing to the debates and the discussion, and really developing that sense of self-confidence and the ability to ask questions, to challenge the executive, and officers to raise issues or queries, and be in that dynamic. It's been fabulous because, again, we've been able to offer a number of places to some of our trainees and our shadow non-execs, but they've also been able to go out there into the rest of the housing world and the world at large and actually apply for non-exec roles and have been successful at doing that. So I suppose the programme is all about creating new pathways, so that we don't end up with the same as what we've always had, and we try and mix that up a little bit and get more diversity in the boardroom.
Yeah, and what a lovely idea. Love HDN as well, and the work that they're doing, and I think we've done quite a lot with them in the past 6 to 12 months. But there's a systemic problem clearly, and we all know that at the boardroom level. And to challenge that, I'd say, what more can we do around championing ED&I in the sector? Because I'm starting to get bored, if I'm honest, probably controversially, but bored of people spotlight managing these things, and like there's something happens in society and then we'll shine a torch on it for 6 to 12 months and then it moves off the focus a little bit. How do we really champion EDI, as a female chief executive in the sector that's done remarkably well in your career? Like what can we do to really champion more diversity at board level, would you say?
I think we have to recognise that inequality exists. I mean, our sector talks about inequality and tries to do something to remedy some of that. But we, as a society, we tend not to talk about it. But as you say, it comes up in conversation because there's a point of crisis or spotlight, and it needs to be part of how we think and feel, and recognise that actually we have inequality. It's been there for many a year, will continue to be there. So what is it that we're going to do to try and redirect and change? And it has to be a sustainable commitment. And we're along that journey. We have to continue along that journey together. I mean, I know when I became chief exec here, there was, I think it was about 4 or 5% of chief execs were female in the housing sector. But about 60% of the staff were female. So it's an interesting, disconnect really there. So we had a lot of women in the sector, but not very many were getting up to the highest level.
Agree.
So, I mean, that's changed, but it's taken 20 years to get to now 35-40% of women as chief execs. And we need to recognise that these things will take time, but we've got to consistently work at it. We can't just do it for a few months, as you say. We have to consistently work at it. And we've got to start, along that continuum at every point. So if people are getting into housing, and we need to make sure that actually entry level, we've got diversity, then once people are in housing, we need to help people develop and grow and ensure that they get those opportunities and chances, and help them along that route, because then we will build momentum. We will get people moving up their career path, and the housing world can be a pioneer really in that, in terms of developing those pathways. So it's about that consistency and long-term commitment, I think.
Yeah,
short-term wins don't really work, I think.
Well, they don't, and I think as a society, Amazon, Deliveroo, all these things that have come in have made us want things right now. Everything has to be today, and I don't believe that this is one of those things that will fix just with one solution. The other thing that I'm seeing a lot across the sector, and we've got much better at this, but we need to start recruiting against potential for me, as well as the skills, because if we continue to recruit the same skills that we need desperately, and we don't look outside of our sector, we'll never change the diversity of what our workforce looks like, because the reality is that we've already got the problem. So if you need an asset director, or you need well, clearly if you go and hire someone from another organisation, it just doesn't solve the problem. It moves it from one business to another. But I think we've got to do a little bit more around educating teams and our leaders to say, let's start recruiting against potential in some of these roles, because we can then look outside of the sector and bring more ideas into our organisations.
I agree, and I think people want to, they're keen to work for organisations that have a real sense of purpose and a value base that they can connect with. And I think we've got that in our sector. So there's a real opportunity to draw people in. And, I think traditionally people haven't necessarily looked at the housing sector and thought, oh, that's the career I want. But actually, once people are in and experience the work that we're trying to do, and the impact that we're trying to have in our society to improve people's life chances, they can really connect to that and see that there are some real career paths that can be created, and in all sorts of professions. I think generally, we think of housing as housing management, don't we, and housing and tenant inclusion, but actually we've got loads of different professions that work in housing, as you well know. So but people don't often see us as a sector that they can step into. But I would encourage people, whether you're an accountant or a marketing individual or a property individual, there's so many different opportunities, and then it's a great place to develop and grow and build careers. And so I think, maybe we need to do a better job as a sector of actually promoting what those opportunities are for that wider diversity of professions, and for people who are not already in the sector.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the one thing that I've observed over my career, and I don't recruit as much as I maybe once did, but I feel that, as a white male, I would look at a job description and I'd say I can do all of that. I presented many times to people that were looking to step up to chief executive or director level, and they go, I can't do that job. Like, there's 3 things on this job description, if it was a female, that I can't do. And I find that's similar with diverse groups. They limit their beliefs because of the way society has maybe checked them in the past. How do we encourage, in your opinion, more people to be braver in those choices? And generally, what advice would you give to people that are aspiring leaders, want to become in leadership roles, as to some of the things they need to do to set themselves up for those challenges that they may face?
I think it's tough, because we're our own, we're our biggest enemies, aren't we? Really, in some respects, we're so critical of ourselves. We see a skill in someone else that we can't do, and we really value it. We see a skill in ourselves that someone else can't do, and we don't really value it. So we are strange human beings sometimes, I think. But that is human nature, and I think building confidence is incredibly important. But also recognizing that actually nobody is perfect. None of us know everything, and the real beauty of that is that actually we're all needing to learn all the time, because our world is changing. So that constant learning and developing, embrace that, because actually opportunities that help you learn and help you develop are really the spaces that we all need to be stepping into. So I think, being brave sometimes and actually saying, I might not feel that comfortable doing that, but I'm going to give it a go. So try new things. And as I say, I think just sometimes giving things a go and actually exploring the art of the possible, rather than thinking, well, I need to know that I can do that 100% before I even try and do it. Because actually, I think is there a saying that you fail by not trying rather than trying? So the failing really in us all is that we don't put ourselves in that opportunity to have a go. And given that chance, very rarely do we fail, and if we do, we grow and we learn from it. And generally speaking, we can apply that positively for the next opportunity. So I would say, definitely don't set your boundaries too tightly. I think that when you need support, it's really good to find people who are going to be able to give you some good advice, some support and some coaching. Never be afraid to ask. Never be afraid to ask for support. And, you know, generally, if you ask someone, they'll say yes. So, you know, yeah, don't be afraid to ask someone, and do find something that is good. You know, I mean, knowing yourself first and foremost and what it is that you value and what motivates you, and get it into that, you know, into that profession or into that sector, and really, really taking the opportunity to learn as broadly as you can. And that you know, that I think would be good advice for anyone who is wanting to develop their career. Wherever and whatever the type of specialism they want to be in.
Yeah, and it's great advice. And I think, you know, one thing that I'm seeing in the sector at the moment is we're very quick to go out to advert for a new role, but actually there's a lot of untapped potential in our management, senior management teams that could step up to some of these roles. Either they don't have the confidence or they don't feel they have the necessary experience. And what I'm loving about our sector at the moment, really love about our sector, is all this reverse mentoring schemes. The HCN are doing a lot of mentoring stuff. Like, you know, actually there's more support than ever, and there's more information than we've ever had at our fingertips. And I think people need to spend the time to go and find themselves a mentor or someone that give them advice, because I think they're plentiful in our sector at the moment.
Yeah, there are, and some great people that work in the sector. And, you know, that's one of the wonderful things, isn't it? That it is a very supportive, friendly sector that actually does want to learn. You know, generally, I think there's great learning opportunities in organisations. But as you say, lots of support networks out there as well. So never, ever be afraid to ask. And I think, you know, even if it's not through a formal mentoring program, that you know, some informal mentoring opportunities within your organisation. Or if there's just somebody you think, you know, I like the way they do things.
Exactly, yeah. And it's such a collaborative sector. The one great thing about our sector is we don't compete, we're collaborating. We all want to solve the same problem, ironically. So I think there's so much help out there. Sometimes people don't ask, and that's the confidence piece coming in again. And as we come to a bit of a close, a couple of things that I wanted to ask you about is, obviously we mentioned that there's some real challenges and headwinds that we're facing as a sector today. What do you see at the moment from a general sector perspective as some of those challenges, and how do you think we can tackle some of them that we're coming up against at the moment?
I think there are some real issues, aren't there, around just the austerity and poverty issues within our society. We work very much in some of the most disadvantaged communities as housing organisations. So we know that some of those challenges are going to hit, and have already hit our customers the quickest and the most, and are probably going to, you know, as we come out of those economic austerity situations as a nation, they're going to be lagging behind in terms of the amount of time that it will take to recover that situation and to recover from some of those economic situations. So I think we've got a real job to do to try and help people through those points of crisis, but also build the strength and the adaptability, really, so that they are ready for those new opportunities. And some of the work that we do around our opportunities objective is around helping people get new skills and develop new training opportunities to get into work and to be ready for those those opportunities that might come along down the road. So really not waiting until the next moment, but actually building in advance. And thinking, what is it that we can do now that will help for that future positioning? We have got some real challenges, I think, in terms of the quality of stock across all sectors, as well as the social housing sector. And, you know, some stock needs major reinvestment. And I actually think that one of the things that's lacking in our social housing policy is that major regeneration funding that we used to have 20 years ago, but it hasn't been around for the last 20 years. And actually, you know, the focus has been on building new, which we very much need to do. But actually, we also need significant regeneration programs to tackle the most severe conditions in our housing stock that really do need tackling. So I think there's some real challenges there. And then just that whole positioning around, you know, that what we do as a sector, I don't think generally the public at large see what we do, but obviously there has been a lot of bad press in terms of the sector more recently. So how do we accept where we need to do better and absolutely work at doing that and find those solutions, but also recognise the good work that we're doing and the important impact that we're having on people's lives, because there is lots and lots of examples across the sector where we're able to offer support and create those new points of opportunity and independence, but it doesn't really get talked about very much. So we need to get better at actually sharing some of the good things as well as recognising where we need to do better.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have summed that up better myself. I think the last point around the bad press, like I meet a lot of chief executives, and there's not one that I've met that doesn't want the best for their customers. And anything that's gone wrong has not been through malice or anything other than just lack of investment or lack of ability to try and do what they need to do. And I know that there's some awful situations that present themselves, but we are in a really difficult time at the moment trying to juggle lots and lots of different agendas, and so it's not an easy place to be right now. And to wrap up, and the final thing for me was just, you've achieved so much, and when you look at Progress and the group of businesses, and you just think there's loads that you've done, but what for you is really important for you in your career, and what's really important that you achieve moving forward for Progress, would you say?
I think that sense of making sure we don't lose sight of all those non-landlord services that we do, whilst we're focusing on making sure we get the very best landlord service that we can deliver. So, it's really important, as you said earlier, sometimes when the spotlight's on a particular area, all resources go there in order to try and, get that change, get it right, put all the effort into making that happen. And I don't want us or the sector to leave behind the other work that we do, which is, it's sometimes thought to be on the periphery, but it isn't. It's at the core, really, of what will make people's lives better and help them take the strides that they want to try to take to have a fulfilling life. So really, that my objective is to ensure that we continue having that offer to our customers, whilst making sure that we step up where we need to step up. So that for me is at the core of I want to see the good work that we do continue and be not only the very best landlord we can, but also the very best friend we can be to our customers.
Yeah, and what a lovely way to finish. I think you've been awesome to have on the podcast. I really appreciate your time, and what an awesome organisation. Like, honestly, I'm sure you're very proud of the business that you run, and I look forward to tracking your progress in the future.
Thanks very much. That's lovely of you to say,
Thank
James.
you.
And thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Hip. If you'd like to hear more from us, please be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast platform. We are also running a 30-minute clinic free of charge to any clients that want to recruit in a more inclusive way. For more information, please reach out to us on our website, andersonjames.com.